WAC Hoops All Access. That's Kyle's favorite part of the show. We are back. Man, it's been a week. We got a lot to talk about. There's kind of starting to be some separation, at least a little bit, of who's where in the top tier. So, and the rest of the tiers. So we'll just jump straight into the good stuff and figure out what do you think about the top tier of this league. And you got to go to some games, but we'll talk about that in a second. But yeah, let's talk about just those top 4 or 5 teams.
Well, I think New Mexico State's kind of starting to pull away from everybody. I mean, they just beat California Baptist and Seattle this week by double digits in both games. They're really putting the defensive clamps down. I mean, we didn't talk last week, so we didn't get to kind of recap the GCU win. Jabari Rice, who's our defensive player of the week, we'll get to that, in a little bit, but he held Javon Blackshear to 3 of 15 shooting from the field, just 10 points in that win for the Aggies over the Lopes. And then against Seattle, he helped hold Cameron Tyson to 4 points, Riley Grigsby to 9 points in the win over league-leading Seattle at the time, which was the second loss for the Redhawks, to put the Aggies atop the WAC standings all alone, where they should be, where everybody thought they would be preseason-wise. I think they're starting to separate themselves. We'll see this week. They go to Dixie State, have a lot more depth than Dixie State, so they should be able to win at Burns Arena. Saturday will be interesting between Utah Valley, New Mexico State, and Orem. We'll see what goes on there. With Utah Valley has the size to match up, so we'll see what happens at the UCCU Center. Seattle's got some question marks. They got to get some role players to start stepping up alongside the big three. It was obvious this week when they lost at Grand Canyon, they lost at New Mexico State. When one of those big three or two of those big three weren't producing, nobody else stepped up, and it hurt the Redhawks in a pair of losses, but they come home. Sam Houston and Grand Canyon still there in that mix. They're right there, but they're only a game ahead in the loss column of Stephen F. Austin, Utah Valley, and Abilene Christian, who's won 5 straight, is right there too. Remember, you want to get that 1 and 2 seed so you get to bye to the WAC semifinals, or the 3-4 seed where you get a bye to the WAC quarterfinals, so you don't have to play 5 games or 4 games in 5 days to win the WAC tournament. But yeah, I think New Mexico State's starting to pull away from everybody, kind of what we expected. They're the deepest team. They're the biggest team. And in all reality, they're the most experienced team as well. So it's no surprise New Mexico State's back atop the WAC standings. But we'll see how these teams respond, like Seattle U from their 2 road losses. Sam Houston just lost its first home WAC game to Utah Valley on Saturday. Stephen F. Austin is playing really well. Grand Canyon, they go on the road this week. They're at Utah Valley on Thursday night. So we'll see how they do on the road, because we know that they play well at home, but their 3 WAC losses were all on the road, Brian. So we'll see how the road trips go for some of these teams this week. I think you went back on mute there, big guy.
Oh, sorry. Try to make sure I'm not making any noises while you're talking and breaking out down the top tier. Gonna jump into this trending topic now, the trending teams. But you mentioned New Mexico State, clear cut at the top. Is there somebody you feel like is right there next to them? I know in the standings, it's kind of like 1 loss, 2 loss, 3 loss. Seattle has 2, I believe. Sam Houston has 3. Is there kind of a second team now that you've seen everybody play, or does it feel like New Mexico State has a little bit of a significant advantage over everyone?
Oh, New Mexico State has a significant advantage over everyone. They just have the size and the depth. I mean, nobody has 10, 5 guys that come off the bench that could start for any other team like they do. Right. And Chris Jans runs into a problem where he doesn't get some guys minutes because he's so deep. It's kind of wild. I think one team to keep an eye on down the stretch is Stephen F. Austin. And
we're going to talk about them. So I got 3 teams in the trending up. Who's trending up? I have 3 I want to throw at you that I see. Abilene Christians won 5 in a row, I believe. Is that correct?
Yep.
So they're trending in a big way. Started finding their groove under first-year coach Brett Tanner. We need to get him on, by the way. So I'll reach out to him. We'll definitely do that. And then Utah Valley is sneakily trending up as well. They got a big win at Sam Houston State. They've kind of been middle of the pack. They're trying to get back healthy. They're starting to get some important players back. We'll talk about that later for one of our awards. And then Stephen F. Austin as well getting back healthy. So really all three of these teams getting back more healthy, getting more of a full roster to where now they can do what they can do well, and they're starting to trend up at the right time because, as we know, it's about one bid. So talk about those three teams in particular, if you don't mind.
So we'll start with Abilene Christian. This is kind of wild, okay? They start WAC play 2-0 with 2 road wins at Utah Valley, which at the time was a quad 1 win, and then they beat Dixie State at Burns Arena. Then they lose 5 straight against the top teams of the WAC, like New Mexico State, Grand Canyon, Sam Houston, Stephen F. Austin. Those were part of their 5 losses. Now they've won 5 straight against the lower tier of the conference. And the big question is, can they go and win some games? They only have 1 game this week at Tarleton, so that'll be an interesting one. Tarleton has nothing to lose because they can't play for the WAC tournament. Abilene Christian looking to stay in that mix to continue to move up, but they've been playing well recently. Finally got a double-digit win on Saturday against UTRGV, which I think was a breath of fresh air for Brett Tanner and the Wildcats because they've been in close games in all 5 of their wins outside of Saturday night. So very interested to see what they can do. They don't have the size like some other teams do. They rely a lot on the guards and playing a little bit smaller, a little bit quicker. And so we'll see what they can do down the stretch. Utah Valley is interesting. They've been up and down through conference play. They have one of the best players in the conference, Fardaws Amac. They got Justin Harmon back, where he played against Chicago State 2 weeks ago in his hometown, had 12 points in his return. He's a key. He's another double-digit scorer that comes off the bench. They're 6-man, really. So it's very exciting for the Wolverines. But on the flip side, this is a huge week, monster week for the Wolverines. Their February is loaded, right? They have to play New Mexico State and Grand Canyon both twice. They finished the regular season at New Mexico State, but this week is huge because on Thursday night they host Grand Canyon, and then Saturday night they host New Mexico State. So big time week for the Wolverines to make a statement to say that, hey, we're the defending WAC regular season co-champs for a reason.
Right.
And we'll see if they can get Trey Woodbury back here in the next few weeks. Still don't know his status. If they get him back, they could be dangerous in Las Vegas. And then
if they get him back, they will be dangerous in Las Vegas.
We saw what he did last year. I think he put up 30-plus points against New Mexico State in the semifinal game in his hometown in Las Vegas. So hopefully the Wolverines are able to get him back. Stephen F. Austin has been intriguing all season long. Up and down, up and down. I think now that Nigel Hawkins, a veteran, is back, healthy, they've taken off. They're averaging 80 points per game in their last 3 games. Offensively, they've been efficient. The average margin of victory for them this week was 24 points. They smoked Utah Valley on last week, and then they smoked Dixie State on Saturday, and they had a road win at CBU. This Stephen F. Austin team is showing the team that I think we all thought they were preseason-wise when we had them second or third, in the selections. And they're a veteran team. They're experienced. They know how to win. And here's the other thing. They're going to win, or they should win, their next 2 games. They play Chicago State this week and then Chicago State next week. Kind of a weird scheduling, situation there by the WAC. I'm not sure how that worked out, but they're getting hot at the right time. And remember, they didn't play in the postseason last year. They were banned from it so they could play in the postseason this year. Keep an eye on Stephen F. Austin as we go forward. Really like this team. Very physical. They have a bunch of freshmen that are playing really well. Jalen Jackson Posey, Dade Hall, Latrell Giselle. Then they have Gavin Kensmill, David Cackleries, Calvin Solomon. They're all playing really well right now, and they get after you physically. I think that's why they beat Utah Valley last week, because Utah Valley wasn't ready for that physicality. I mean, and they have a win over Grand Canyon already. So there's a lot to play for here. And I believe Sam Houston and SFA play later on down the road. Yeah, they play on February 24th in Nacogdoches. So that'll be a huge, battle of the Piney Woods. But I like Stephen F. Austin right now and the way that they're rolling offensively and defensively. And I think they're a team that you have to keep an eye on as the season winds down here in February.
Yeah, I would agree with that. There's definitely we talked about this before, and not even just talking about who's trending up, but just talking about the kind of overall part of the league. And there's 7 of the 13 teams that have a winning record. Potentially all 7 of them could get to 20 wins on the season. You could potentially have 7 20-win teams within the WAC. And we talk about all the time, this league deserves, it's hard to give every league feels like they need more credit, right? They want to be able to tell that they're a good mid-major league, and every conference is hard. If you're in it, it's the hardest conference there is. However, the numbers, you want to be able to have some numbers behind that to say, hey, this legitimizes how hard our conference is. And those numbers are definitely numbers. It doesn't mean at the bottom doesn't still compete with the best of them, because Tarleton, Dixie State, Cal Baptist, UTRGV, they may not have a chance to get a winning record, but in any given night, those teams can sneak up on you. I know Cal Baptist taking a couple of teams to overtime. So you have this league where it's a deep league, 13 teams, a lot of teams. The top half, that top 7, really, really strong as far as winning record and potentially 20 wins. So, we wanted to go into those. Let's talk about the awards. Let's go straight to those, and then we'll talk about the upcoming games. So we'll just start with Team of the Week. You've talked about them a little bit. Let's dive in a little bit more on what makes this team so good.
Yeah, so the Team of the Week, it should come as no surprise, New Mexico State.
Right.
They beat up on California Baptist on Thursday. Then they rolled over Seattle on Saturday and led from start to finish. Teddy Allen continues to be a WAC Player of the Year candidate. I think he's leading it right now, if I'm giving my true opinion on it. Jabari Rice showed that he's a lockdown defender. They're deep. Johnny McCants is playing better basketball. And they got some contributions. Ua Alok started this weekend and just was really efficient in the short time he was on the floor. He's got to stay on the floor and not get into foul trouble. Chris Gems mentioned that. But the Aggies are according to Chris Gems, they're still not at their ceiling yet. He knows they could get better, and that's a scary thought. I mean, at 9-1 in WAC play, 19-3 overall, they've won. They've won 4 straight since that weird loss at Sam Houston. They're just the deepest team and the biggest team. Chris Jens mentioned it. This is his biggest team he's ever had at New Mexico State, with the length and with the size on the floor. I mean, Teddy Allen is a guy that can play the 2, 3, 4 position. Jabari Rice could play multiple positions. And so it's just an interesting team, talented team, veteran team, and they're on a mission. After last season, when they lost the way they did to Grand Canyon in the WAC Tournament Championship, and they weren't able to play any home games, it's just a motivated team that is playing well together right now. And they're our Team of the Week. I mean, it wasn't even, like I said, they led start to finish against Seattle, and they held 2 of those 3 big 3 under 10 points. I mean,
and not even to mention, to jump in on you, Kyle, last week they had a monster week, and we didn't necessarily have a live show last week, but I mean, this team, Coach Jans talked about it. You guys will be able to see that interview coming soon, coming later today, actually. James Miller talked about it. James Miller talked about the fact that, like you said, they're motivated. Some of those guys had chances to leave and go other places. They wanted to leave how they really found it, to be honest. They wanted to leave on top. They still have some ways to go to earn that. They all know that, but they're trending that way right now. And then Coach Jans just talked about as well, they still have another level that they can get to. They're still trying to figure out some different things. He talked about Jabari Rice is kind of better off the ball, but they're having to play him a lot on the ball, but they're looking for some development from some other guys. So exciting times. They deserve Team of the Week. As we talk about them, usually when you have Team of the Week, you have a player that's led that. Teddy Allen is right now, in my humble opinion as well, the player of the year in the league. He's proven before even this stop that he has high major talent. Now he's doing it in so many other ways than just scoring. Let's talk about Teddy Allen a little bit.
Yeah, no offense to Arian Simmons and Abilene Christian. I know the WAC chose him as the WAC player of the week after a big game against UTRGV on Saturday, but Teddy Allen's just been so consistent all season long. I mean, he averaged 27.5 points, 6 rebounds, and a pair of wins this week. Went 22 of 26 from the free throw line in both, in the games combined. He's just doing it all. We've said it over and over and over again in these interviews and on my podcast, on the Straight Out of WAC podcast as well that I do. He's become a complete player. We knew he could score, but now he's rebounding, he's defending, and he's, according to Chris Jans, he's in the best condition of his life because that's like almost his sole focus. And the fact is he understands taking better shots. I mean, he didn't have a 3 against CBU, but he found other ways to score and get the 20-plus points in that game. So it's just a matter of his basketball IQ is getting better. He understands his role. He understands that at times he has to take over. It's like I was talking with Adam Young on Monday. It could be a 6-7 point game for the Aggies, and then Teddy all of a sudden decides to take over and blows it out to 16, 17, 18 points and just so quickly. And it's just a matter of he's becoming a complete basketball player. He's bought into what Chris Jans and the staff have expected of him, and he knows that if he doesn't do certain things, he's not going to be on the floor, like Chris Jans has mentioned. And he's gained that trust and that confidence from the staff and his teammates. And I mean, I feel like you said, he's the WAC player of the year, leading candidate right now for what he's doing for the Aggies. I don't know that they would be where they are or as good as they are without Teddy Allen, doing what he's doing.
Yeah, we're just going to keep it in New Mexico State for one more with Jabari Rice. Coach Jans talked about him. I've coached against him. I've recruited him. He's a Houston kid. Recruited him to Lamar. At the time, Coach Jans talked about a little bit on our episode that academically he needed to figure out some things, and New Mexico State was the place to help him figure that out. And man, it feels like he's been there forever now, and it's just impressive to see his competitive nature. I think there's not a lot of guys that you'll see in college basketball that have more of a competitive spirit than he does. He just has just such a joy for competing and such a passion for that. And on top of that, he's a good player. I mean, he's been a good player. He's continuing to do that. He's playing on the ball more, but he's just he's one of those guys that if you're going into the foxhole, you're going on the road, you're playing against a tough opponent, you want him on your side. But let's break down his defensive performances and just his overall, and we'll go to the next one.
So Teddy Allen spends a lot of time watching film on his opponents. Like, he wants to know tendencies. He wants to know what they do here or there in these situations. And that's what makes him such a great player, is that he puts in the time to learn about who he's going up against. And it was crucial for him in the last 2 weeks. I mean, goes up against Javon Blackshear, who's one of the best scoring guards in the WAC. Goes up against CBU's Taron Armstrong, who just returned from injury, but who is getting a lot of hype around the NBA draft prospects and so forth. And then he had to go up against either Darian Trammell, Cameron Tyson, Riley Grigsby on Saturday. And he loves to know what they do, what their tendencies are. So he watches a lot of film, gets a lot of breakdown from the scout that they put together. And his length and athleticism, and like you said, Brian, the competitiveness. I mean, that's what a lot of James Miller mentioned it. Chris Jans has mentioned it. Just that competitiveness. He sometimes gets too competitive and gets down on himself if things don't work out. But, things worked out the last 3 games for the Aggies and Jabari Rice. I mean, he held Javon Blackshear to just 10 points on 3 of 15 shooting from the field. That doesn't happen a lot. He defended Taron Armstrong, when they played CBU on Thursday, held him under double digits. And then he helped shut down Cameron Tyson in Seattle. Yeah, Darian Trammell went off, but he helped hold 2 of that trio to under 10 points in that double-digit win over the Redhawks. It just, like I said, high basketball IQ, understanding what his opponents are trying to do, and being super competitive. That's what puts him ahead of people when it comes to defending and shutting people down. And like you said, he's been around forever. I remember 2019, I covered the Aggies when they played Auburn in Salt Lake City in the NCAA tournament.
Yeah.
Game that they should have won. I was so disappointed they didn't win that game. And I know I don't want to hurt Aggie fans by talking about it, but like he was there rooting his guys on, helping coach, helping tell people where to go, where to be. And that's what Chris Jans loves about Jabari Rice is that when they practice, he's talking about, hey, maybe we should try this or that. You know, Chris Jans mentioned he's never really had a player that's done that before, and it makes it easier to prep for teams and get ready. And
right.
Jabari Rice is a student of the game of basketball, and that's very important as a defender who is required to shut down some of the best players in the league.
Absolutely. Speaking of best players in the league, and some of them, newcomer of the week, you got a chance to see this young man up close and personal. Tell us what you thought and why you thought he's newcomer of the week.
Yeah, Holland Woods, GCU. I like this guy. I mean, and the combo with Javon Blackshear Jr., it just works so well. Two ball handlers, two guys that can score, two guys that can find ways to get to the rim. I really enjoyed watching this week when I was in Phoenix. I mean, he had 22 points in the win over Seattle, 11 points in the win over California Baptist. Probably would have been more, but it was an ugly offensive game for both teams in that Saturday game against California Baptist. Just a big part of the Lopes offense. Like both Javon Blackshear and Holland Woods are the double-digit scoring for the Lopes. Nobody else scores in double figures for the Lopes, so they're dependent on these two. And Holland Woods is very, very good off the ball, able to hit a pull-up jumper. I love that when guys can do that. It's a lost art these days. Able to hit a three-pointer at the times that it needed, but he can also find ways to get the ball into other guys' hands. Him and Charlotte Miller Moore connect on alley-oop dunks nearly every game. And so he's just a leader. He comes from Arizona State, so you know what you're getting from him. And he's been really, really good for the Lopes, and that's why he's our newcomer of the week, Holland Woods, after a really good weekend for the Lopes at home.
Yep, no doubt. Well said. No need to add anything to that. Let's go sixth man of the week. You've also seen this young man play in person, I believe, against BYU when he had probably was player of the game or second player of the game in that game. So, yeah, let's talk about him.
So our sixth man is Justin Harmon, Utah Valley. People say I'm biased because I, went to Utah Valley. All this, no. Justin Harmon is the sixth man, and had he not gotten hurt, I guarantee he would be the sixth man of the year in the WAC for what he's done. Like Brian said, he had 24 points and 7 rebounds in the win over BYU on December 1st. Got hurt a couple days later in practice. Hasn't played. Didn't play until last week when Utah Valley hosted or went to Chicago State. His first game back, he got to play in front of his hometown fans. He just does so many things that the Wolverines don't have. He's able to attack the rim, get to the free throw line, defend, leadership, basketball IQ. Like we talk about that a lot. High basketball IQ, understands his role, understands what he's doing. I mean, against Chicago State in his hometown, he had 12 points in his return, was 5 of 8 from the field, 3 rebounds, 4 assists. I mean, the guy does it all. And this last week, he did it all again. Averaged 7.5 points for the Wolverines. It just gives Mark Madsen another scoring threat off the bench. And as he gets his feet back under him, he's going to have a bigger role. And he's on the floor at the end of games too. So that tells you a lot more about the fact that he does come off the bench, but Mark Madsen trusts him so much that he's on the floor at the end of ball games. Excuse me. And Justin Harmon is going to be very good and someone to watch for the Wolverines as the season winds down.
Yeah, sometimes six man doesn't mean you're not actually a starter, right? Like you can still be a starter, but the way that the rotation may be most effective. I mean, we can think of plenty of guys. Jason Terry was the second leading scorer on a World Championship Mavericks team with Dirk. You got Manu Ginobili won championships and was a six man. Like sometimes it's just the flow of your lineup can work better. I think Lamar Odom came off the bench some when he was with the Lakers at times. So, yeah, you have those guys that can come off the bench. Iguodala won MVP of the final. So, anyway, just giving some examples because just because you're six man as we continue to do those awards doesn't mean you're not a starter. I mean, you play 6 minutes, you're a starter. You're on the floor at the end, you're a starter. You just happen to not give the high fives when it all comes out. But
and Justin Harmon's the guy that, I know everything runs through Fardell's AMAC for the Wolverines, but Justin Harmon's the guy that Mark Madsen will put the ball in his hands and say, go make a play for us when we need it. Right. And he can do that. Like, he can attack the rim, he hit a three, and he can get the free throw line. And so that's crucial for the Wolverines going forward to have a guy like that. And I know they're ecstatic to have Justin Harmon back in the lineup.
Absolutely. Let's talk about freshman of the week. Going back down to Texas. This is halfway a Texas league, so I'm always showing bias towards Texas players. Maybe not always the Texas teams. I try to be a little more even on that, but the players, I'm always going to show love to. This young man from Dallas, know him fairly well, recruited him a little bit, but got a chance to watch him a lot. And unfortunately, he was hurt last year. He probably would have been freshman of the year in the Southland Conference for sure, and probably could be the same if he wasn't hurt as much as he's been hurt this year. But really good player, Jalen Posey from Stephen F. Austin. Yeah,
it's funny. No offense to Raekwon Taylor from UTRGV. I know he had a big week for the Vaqueros, but winning goes a long way in these decisions for these Player of the Week awards. Stephen F. Austin won both games this week, really dominant fashion, and Jalen Jackson Posey was a big part of it. Averaged 14 points for SFA. They swept Utah Valley, swept Dixie State. That they're getting more minutes because of injuries. Rothi Ware, is out for the season, so Jalen Jackson Posey is getting more minutes, and he's doing exactly what Kyle Keller wants him to do, being efficient offensively and also being physical defensively. Like, it's the length that he has that is creating problems for other teams, and it just fits right into what the Lumberjacks are trying to do. They've won 3 straight. They're averaging 80-plus points per game. And Jalen Jackson Posey is a big reason for that. Was a big reason this weekend for the 2 dominant wins. And, the freshmen at SFA are going to be relied on going forward as they try to make a run for, one of those top seeds at WAC Vegas.
Yep, could not agree more. I think that's all of our awards. Is that it?
I think it is. Oh, I think we got all those awards, yeah.
I think we got them all, believe it or not. All right, so now we will go to upcoming games. We'll close out the show, talk about upcoming games, and then we'll let everybody get back to whatever it is that they're doing to take time away to listen and tune into us. But upcoming games, what do you see? I would pick out one and say New Mexico State playing Utah Valley Saturday is a big one. Utah State starting to play their best. Excuse me, not Utah State. Utah Valley starting to play their best basketball. I just was at a Utah State game last night, so forgive me, Utah Valley. You guys are neighbors. But yeah, just that game will be a big one. They're starting to play their best ball. Obviously, New Mexico State has separated themselves as the top team in the league at this time. So that one sticks out to me. What else looks good to you?
Well, you said New Mexico State at Utah Valley. Grand Canyon, Utah Valley on Thursday night is a big one too.
Yes, I forgot about that.
The co-defending champions of the WAC.
Yeah, both
regular season, who split last year.
Yep.
That'll be interesting. I was at GCU this past week, watched them play Seattle and CBU. I'm going to give a little bit of an edge to the Wolverines because their big men are more offensively efficient than GCU's are. Now, it'll come down to guard play.
There's not very many more efficient big men than Utah Valley's part of us. I mean,
yeah, but people don't underestimate Tim Fuller and his ability, and Tim Caesar, who is able to step out and hit a 3, or he's got this long athleticism, that people don't really recognize. But they just have a little bit more in the paint. I'm interested to see what they do in the guard lines. Javon Blackshear and Blaze Neild. Jay McClanahan against Javon Blackshear, Holland Woods, and the Trey Darhart. Like, that'll be interesting. I want to go a little off the radar with 2 games that I'm watching this weekend.
Yeah, let's zoom in. What you got?
Abilene Christian at Tarleton. A little bit of an old school rivalry from when they were not Division I.
Not Lone Star Conference. I was a part of those days.
Well, and Abilene Christian only has 1 win over Tarleton in their history. So that was last year when they played, first year in Division I for Tarleton. This is an intriguing matchup because they're teams that are very similar in build and style and the way they play, wanting to force turnovers. And Abilene Christian's still playing for their seeding in the WAC tournament. Tarleton has nothing to lose, just trying to prove that they belong in the WAC. Just an intriguing matchup there. They're going to be rivals going forward in this conference, no doubt about it, because of their closeness and the fact that they're both purple and white. Let's throw that out there right now.
Which purple will win?
Which purple will win? And then UTRGV, excuse me, at California Baptist on Saturday. And people will say, well, why do you choose that game? Well, UTRGV is 2-9 in conference play. California Baptist is 2-8 in conference play. If either one of whoever wins this game probably solidifies their spot in the WAC tournament, because I'm not sure Lamar is going to win 3 games the rest of the way in conference play. But for California Baptist, you're better than your 2-8 record. At least people think that. So go out and prove it. For UTRGV, you're just trying to continue to make some progress going into Las Vegas. I mean, you've struggled all season. You haven't been healthy. You play a wild style of basketball. And you just want to, find a way to win a couple games here and get some momentum going to WAC Vegas. But it could be a preview of the first round in Las Vegas of this game. So it's an intriguing matchup to me. People don't realize I look all over the WAC. I don't just focus on, the number 1 versus number 2 or these two big teams. Like, there are some intriguing matchups that have a lot more meaning this year than most years.
Well said. I got one last thing I'm going to sneak on to you. You did this last time and did such a good job of it. We're going to do a quick women's basketball shout-outs in the WAC. What doesn't have to necessarily be about games per se, but just about anyone that's played well, anything you just want to shout out so we can give the women's basketball side of things a shout out every show.
Well, the shout out goes to the Stephen F. Austin women. I mean, they went on the road this week, beat Utah Valley, beat Dixie State. Last week, they played 3 games within like 4 days, beat Seattle, beat California Baptist, who's the defending WAC champions, and then beat Grand Canyon on the road. They're rolling right now in Nacogdoches on the women's side. They're 5th, I believe, in the collegeinsider.com mid-major rankings. Mark Kellogg has his team rolling and doing. I think the only people that are surprised are the people that aren't Jacks fans. Like, everybody around the Stephen F. Austin program knew how good that team was, and it's just been fun to watch. And they've won on the road. They've won at home. Stephen F. Austin women, they are right now 10-0 in WAC play, 19-3 overall. They have a 2-game lead in the WAC standings. The Stephen F. Austin women are putting themselves out there as the team to beat in the WAC.
Yeah, and last year it was Cal Baptist went undefeated. Now Stephen F. Austin's taking their turn. And shout out to my family member, Mr. Lynn Bishop, out there doing his thing.
I need to give one more shout out to on the women's side, Brian.
Please.
Sam Houston women. Raven Justin returned 2 weeks ago.
Yeah. And
they have not lost since she returned to the sideline. She left for personal reasons for a while, then came back 2 weeks ago. They haven't lost a conference game since. They're 4-0 since she returned.
That's awesome.
I mean, they beat California Baptist, like, start to finish. They led, in Huntsville. So it's amazing what happens when your head coach returns. And, it almost looked like Sam Houston women were out of the race when, before she came back. Now they're right back in, for the seeding. They're 5-6 in conference play. Like I said, they've won 4 straight since she came back. And, just a shout out to Sam Houston for responding when their coach returned.
Yeah, and shout out to Coach for returning. Whatever may have been going on, we're all glad to see that you're back on the other side of it and able to lead your team as you do so well. Well, that is the show. 35 minutes on the dot. Been a blast. You know where to find us. You know where to find the WAC games. Look for a great interview with Coach Chris Jans, leading the team of the week. And, we'll be back at it again next week. Be safe.